Well, that was probably the unlikeliest fight of the year contender that I've seen for some while. But what a fight that turned into. Frankie Gavin versus Sam Eggington. Huge credit to both men in the ring. Really enjoyed that fight. Really enjoyed that fight. And it was a fight that on paper had the potential to be a bit of a snooze fest. Since turning pro, it's hard to really have been enthusiastic about any fight that we've seen Frankie Gavin in terms of the style that he fights, in terms of the action he brings to the ring. But, arguably a career best performance from both men in there tonight. And I should say Sam Eggington wins the fight by stoppage. I think the stoppage came in the 8th round. But this fight really could have gone, it was going back and forth and back and forth. Eggington comes out and wins the first round for my money. Gavin wins the second round. In the third round, Eggington scores a knockdown. Gavin doesn't appear to be hurt and rallies very strongly. So Eggington wins the third round 10-8, but for my money, Gavin looks the superior operator in the fourth round. I have Gavin doing a very good job in the fourth, and I believe the fifth round may have just been the fourth. Eggington then starts to hurt Gavin to the body. I think after 5, I've got it even. I think I've got it 3 rounds to 2 in Gavin's favour, but obviously Eggington's got the 10-8 round. So I've got it even after 5, but I've got the momentum very much in Frankie's favour. And I thought Frankie was really going to take over the fight at that point. The 6th round, Eggington hurts him to the body, and to be honest, that spells the end of the fight. Gavin put on the most entertaining performance in his career, and bizarrely, it is probably the first time I've seen Frankie Gavin fight where after the fight I thought, I really want to see him fight again. And it's bizarre that the first time I felt that about Frankie Gavin's career was after a loss. But I thought Frankie Gavin looked really good in there. He was far more offensively minded, far more high output than we've seen him in the past. Some of the punches that he was landing on Sam Eggington were perfect. His right hook to Sam Eggington was so effective. He was throwing good combinations, he was throwing good hand speed. He was showing excellent work with his back to the ropes, where Eggington would charge forward and he'd lean and he'd dip and he'd get up and counter with the right, and he was clocking Eggington left, right and centre. Eggington, for me, was completely overmatched in terms of skills. But what Eggington had was huge heart, an edge in power, an edge in size, and a real fantastic engine. Credit goes to Sam Eggington for this win. His fitness, his engine, his heart, his size and strength won in this fight. Because I've got to say, as clear as day to me, Frankie Gavin was the superior technician in there. Frankie Gavin was landing the better constructed punches, but Eggington poured it on. He poured it on. He found out that he could hurt Gavin to the body, and he went to the body effectively time and time again, was able to keep using his strength and his size to position Gavin back to the ropes and land with an effective barrage of punches when he did it. Both men, to me, emerged from this fight with supreme credit. It's got to be said, and it's frustrating to say this again, because I say this nearly every time he fights. If Frankie Gavin made £140, and if you look at the size difference between these two guys in the ring, Eggington did look 2 weight classes above him. If Frankie Gavin made £140, he could be a real superb fighter. His weaknesses at £140 are a lack of power and potentially some problems with punch resistance. Sam Eggington isn't a massive puncher, and the fact that Sam Eggington was able to hurt him to the body on multiple occasions perhaps tell you that Gavin's conditioning wasn't spot on. So if Frankie Gavin can fight like that and pick punches like that and pot shot like that, and he really has the attributes to be a threat at 140, because some of his defensive work and some of the punches he was landing in there was world class. Unfortunately, there's so many attributes to his game that aren't even British level at the minute, such as power, such as punch resistance, etc., that he's getting found out. Sam Eggington, he's a likeable fighter. Huge amount of engine, huge amount of determination. I've got to be honest, and I don't want to look like sour grapes because I picked Gavin to win this fight. But Sam Eggington is a nice guy. He's a likeable fighter, but he is inherently limited. The amount of punches he ate from Frankie Gavin today, the amount of counter punches he ate from Frankie Gavin, if that was another welterweight, if that was anyone in the top 10 of the welterweight division, I'm afraid Sam Eggington would be knocked and rendered unconscious. He is too open, he's too easy to hit. But he's a monster for 147. He's a big guy. He obviously is extremely well conditioned, and despite the fact that obviously he's a very big guy for the weight, he's still able to suck himself down, and he's still able to fight with that engine and that punch output. So real credit goes to both men, and I'm really taken aback with how much I enjoyed the fight and with how much I want to see both guys go on from here. Again, I'm trying not to look like sour grapes, but I still believe Frankie Gavin does have the higher upside of the two. It's funny, a fight like this, despite the fact it's a devastating loss, doesn't necessarily have to be to the detriment of Gavin's career if it teaches him the message that he has to hit 140 pounds. If it becomes clear that he can't even beat the Sam Eggingtons of this world at 147, hopefully that's the wake-up call he needs for 140 pounds. As for Sam Eggington, it's a career-high win for him, it's a profile-raising win for him, and it's a win in good style, winning by knockout and, dropping Frankie Gavin on several occasions. Real credit goes to Sam Eggington off the back of this performance. The question is, do we believe off the back of this he can perform at a higher level? And I'm unsure. I still think he's a bit raw. I still think he's a bit green. I think defensively he's very, very limited. I'm watching the replays now on the screen, and that right hook, pretty much every time Gavin threw it, it landed. Imagine him against a Kell Brook or a Danny Garcia or a Keith Thurman or even a Sean Porter or an Amir Khan. For me, that sort of power dynamic that those guys could bring to the table would be really problematic for Sam Eggington. But it's funny, this bill really didn't excite me at the start of the night. But the Agogo-Cunningham fight was certainly an interesting fight. This fight was a great fight. This is a fight that do I want to see a rematch? Probably not, because I want to see Gavin making 140 pounds. And I think he looked too small in there. I don't think his punch resistance was there. And clearly he was landing absolute haymakers on Eggington and not even able to wobble him. So clearly the power isn't there. But yeah, for me, a real interesting fight. And it's generated interest for me in both guys' careers, which is really what you like to see in fights of this nature. So I'm keen to hear people's thoughts here. How do you rate the fight? One thing I've got to say, and I hate to have a moan after such a good fight, the scorecards from the Sky commentators were ludicrous. Borderline criminal, they were so bad. I think going into the 7th round, I had Frankie Gavin 1 down. I'd scored most of the rounds to Frankie Gavin, but the rounds that Eggington had won, at least 2 of them were 10-8 rounds because of the 2 knockdowns. I think I had Frankie Gavin after 7. I think I had Gavin winning 4 of the 7 rounds. But obviously the 3 of the rounds that Eggington won, 2 of them were 10-8. So I had Eggington ahead by 1 point. Now the Sky commentators had Sam Eggington ahead by 4 or 5 or 6 rounds. I can't remember what it was, but it was ludicrously wide. Ludicrously wide. I was speaking to some friends in a group on Twitter at the time, and all of us had it pretty even, pretty tight. And when those scorecards came up, we thought it was a joke. And it's interesting because yet again, scorecards are something that we need to discuss because the news is broken that Agogo-Cunningham fight, and I think I had Cunningham ahead by 5 rounds at the time of the stoppage in that fight. But that 5 points, not 5 rounds. But that Agogo-Cunningham fight, the judges had it even, which is so bizarre to my mind. Agogo landed nothing of note in the entire fight. He was so inaccurate. So how is it that the judges had that fight even? How could they score Agogo 4 rounds? And it's the same here with the Sky commentators. I don't know what the judges had Gavin Eggington on the scorecards, but how did the judges have Eggington ahead by 5 or 6 rounds? Sorry, how did the commentators have Eggington ahead by 5 or 6 rounds? absolutely ludicrous for me, and it's something that I'm looking to discuss further on the podcast this week. A few people think I'm just trying to hate and just trying to nitpick, but I think this is becoming a serious issue when the scorecards seem to be that wide and that out consistently. It's bizarre. When I did my live stream earlier, when I was commenting on a Go Cunningham, we had 120 boxing fans joining us on the stream, and between rounds, people were commenting the scores, and there wasn't a single person who commented who had a go ahead. There wasn't a single person who had a go ahead, and there wasn't a single person who had to fight a draw. There was one person who had it close but Cunningham ahead, but the majority had Cunningham wide. That's 120 hardcore boxing fans, yet the judges had it even. I'd be fascinated if we'd repeated this experiment for Gavin Eggington. How many people would have had it even, or Eggington by 1 round or 2 round or even 3 rounds, but to have Eggington by the margins the Sky commentators did, for me, farcical and embarrassing, and something that I look forward to discussing further with the podcast panel on Wednesday. Let me know your thoughts, people. Let me know your thoughts on the commentary, on the scoring, on Frankie Gavin and on Sam Eggington. Did the fight go as you expected it to? I must admit, I didn't think Eggington would win, and I certainly didn't think the fight would go down that way. I got this one badly wrong. But to an extent, and obviously it's not good to get predictions wrong, but to an extent, I'm glad we got the fight we did. A highly entertaining matchup, and both guys emerged with credit. Gavin can be a threat at 140. Eggington, I don't think he's got the skills to be world level at 147, but that heart, that engine, that output, that size at the weight means that he can potentially get a few decent name wins under his belt. Thanks for watching, guys. If you've enjoyed this, please hit the thumbs up button. As ever, if you're new, support the channel and subscribe. Many thanks for watching.